Hello, I'm Beverly Bailey, and I'd like to tell you how I happen to be here in Adrian, Michigan. It all started way back in Germany. And in Germany, oh dear, my goodness sakes, my grandfather, August Ost, and his brother Karl were going to fight for the Kaiser. During that time, Chancellor Bismarck had upped the draft. Well, they were on the train ready to go fight for the Kaiser when my grandfather decided he did not want to fight for the Kaiser. So he jumped ship. He landed in a port city of Germany and managed to get on the steamboat, the Mosel. Now, this boat had about 100 passengers on deck and 750 passengers in steerage. He, of course, was in steerage. Well, he made his way then, it took 2 weeks, in steerage to America. And when they reached the docks, there was a lot of activity going on. Now, that was before the Statue of Liberty had come to the harbor, and President Garfield had just been assassinated. Well, there were other Germans on the docks, and they decided, okay, we better go west. And so, being a young man, 23 years of age at that time, he traveled west and ended up in Michigan. Now, also in Germany, a little bit later, agents went to Germany to try to get young people that would settle the western lands. And so they would go to different couples, young couples in Germany, and talk to them and tell them about the promised land and all that they could have if they would come to America. Well, my grandfather Buchweitz and his wife were farmers, and they were working for a bigger farmer, and they decided they wanted to have a better life for their children and themselves. And so they thought it over and then decided it sounded like a good thing. So they got their passports and their birth certificates and everything ready, and then they boarded a train and they went to Hamburg, Germany. From there, a ship to London, England, and from there, a ship to Winnipeg, Canada. Now with them, they had a 13-month-old boy and a 6-week-old girl. They also had my grandmother Buchweitz's brothers that were Girth. It was August and Karl Girth. And they traveled with them. It took 3 weeks on their boat, but they did have a cabin, even though they went through many storms. They had to travel to Winnipeg, Canada, by train. There they met their sponsor. Now, their sponsor was a man, or a farmer, who paid for their passage to come to America. Well, when they came to America, then they had to work to pay for their passage, so they had to work for 6 months as indentured servants to the farmer. After the 6 months were up, then they packed up their wagon with all their belongings and what money that they had saved, and they crossed the border into North Dakota. As they crossed the border, of course, they had to have their passports, and they had to sign a pledge that they would be faithful to the city of, or the country of America, and that they would not have any loyalty left for the King of Prussia. They made their way on a wagon, and it was hard going because there weren't any roads at that time. All there were trails. They ended up in the upper east corner of North Dakota with a lot of other German settlers, and they were given about a quarter of a section of land it was. And then they got together and they helped each other build sod houses. Now, sod houses were 3 foot wide at the bottom, and then they tapered toward the top. They lived in a sod house for 5 years with their children. Now, when mother grew up, she was one of she was one of the children. They had 11 children, not all in the sod house after they had built a house. Mother went to German school, in the regular school, and then she also went to a North Dakota State Teachers College. And after she graduated from her college, she decided she wanted to see the world. Well, there were cousins in Adrian, Michigan that she came to see. When she came to see the cousins, she met my father. Now, my father lived in Lenawee County, and he was one of 12 people that my grandfather and grandmother Ost had, 12 children that they had. And Dad, when he got to be of a certain age, I don't know if it was 18 or 21, he left the farm, never to return to it again. He decided that the farming life was not for him, and so he was working in a factory, American Chain and Cable, when he and Mother met. Well, Mother didn't get much farther than Adrian, Michigan. She stayed and she married Dad, and they settled in on the east end of town on Maple Avenue, which was right across from the Catholic Church, St. Joe's Catholic Church. And it was called Dutch Hill. There were about 50 German families that had settled around Dutch Hill originally, and they could hear the service at St. Joe's in German at that time. And Dad continued to work at the American Chain and Cable, and then during the war years, my mother also worked there. They had 3 children. I have an older sister, Sharon, and a younger brother, Larry. After we outgrew the house on Maple Avenue, we moved to Ormsby Street, just 2 blocks away from St. Joe's Church. We had many relatives in the area and had a good time with all of them. When growing up in Lenawee County, around the church or in Dutch Hill or on Dutch Hill, was the best time of anybody's life. We all were in the same situation. We all were about the same kind of people, I guess I should say, and it was more fun back then, before television, when neighbors would come and talk with you on the porch, or in a winter evening, people would drop in to play canasta all evening long. A neighbor would come in and play the accordion. Other neighbors would open their doors when they were practicing piano. So doors were always open and people were always coming and going, and the front porches were always busy. As children, we had a wonderful time. We could play with cars in the dirt and nobody cared about what was happening to the lawns. We could play hide and go seek and kick the can. There were only one really major rule, and that was we could not step in anybody's yard that did not have children. But we managed to have a really good time. We enjoyed it when the iceman came delivering ice, and he would throw hunks of ice off of the back of the cart to us. The cart was drawn by a horse. That was a nice favorite animal that we enjoyed seeing. In the wintertime, we'd eat icicles off the houses. We'd clean the coal soot off of the snow, and we'd pretend to make ice cream with vanilla and a little bit of sugar added to the clean snow. On Hunt Street, there was a hill that the city would block off when we were children, and we could slide down that hill in the wintertime. It was blocked off by sawhorses, and they had black smudge pots with fire coming on to keep the people away or for warming our hands. And nobody thought that anybody could possibly get hurt. The kids couldn't get hurt if they were holding their hands over fire out in the middle of the street. It was just a very friendly, wonderful way to live. As for the foods that we ate extremely well. My father was a hunter, and so he would, whenever anything would be in season, that's what we would have for dinner that night. He also caught many fish, and so we ate wild game and fish. We were also the kind of people that would gather fruits and nuts, and so we had hickory nuts and walnut meats and wild strawberries and wild asparagus and morel mushrooms, and anything that we could gather would be put to good use. Oh, as for our holidays, they were strictly traditional, nothing extremely different, except when I was very young, we would have big holiday dinners at my grandmother Ost's house. Now, we had such a large family, you can imagine she had 12 children, and they all had large families, that we ate in shifts. There'd be an old cook stove going, and then the new electric stove would be going, and the huge table would be set. The men would eat first, After the table was cleared, then the children would eat. After the table was cleared again, then the women would eat. And it worked out very well until eventually even the big old farmhouse couldn't hold us all. And so then we had just typical Thanksgiving dinners with family and friends, and sometimes they were large and sometimes they were very small. No different foods. Our foods were just very traditional. The turkey and the potatoes and such. We never did have any special German foods that we enjoyed very much. We enjoyed all food. We had to. It was clean your plates because of all those starving children in Europe. So that's what we had to do, whether we liked it or not. My mother did make a type of a German noodle or dumpling, and it was a hard dumpling. And it didn't have any special name, but it was kind of a cross between spatzel and a dumpling. So I'm still very fond of it and make it often whenever I have chicken broth to do it in. Yeah, let's see, what else is there?
Occupations?
Oh, after my father always worked at the American Chain and Cable. He was very proud of his work. He worked on a machine called the Strander. He was never late, and he never missed a day of work in his life. My mother worked for a short time, as I said, during the war years at the factory, but then she got her master's degree from the University of Michigan, and she taught at Old McKinley School and New McKinley School for many, many years until she retired. She taught second grade mostly, and I think she enjoyed every minute of it, and she's still remembered fondly by a lot of people who had her as a teacher. And
what occupations did you have?
For me, well, I've always been an art teacher. My first year of college was at U of M. Then I was married, and I finally graduated from Adrian College. As an art teacher, I traveled for 4 different schools, and I had what was called Art on a Cart. It had its fantastic moments, and then it had moments that were not so fantastic, just like any teacher. But yes, I enjoyed being an art teacher. It gave me a great big high whenever some child just would grin and smile and be so pleased with what they did.
Do you ever participate in or contribute to multicultural programs in Lenawee County?
Being an art teacher gave me a lot of time in a lot of different ways to bring in different cultures in Lenawee County. There's so many things, and elementary students love colorful art, and they love learning about different cultures, and talking about them kind of inspires them to create their own kind of art for that culture. So we did many different cultures, and art just kind of fits into that. You know, it's a good thing to have. It's one way of bringing the cultures into the child's life, and they remember different cultures that way. We do pyramids and piñatas, and we would do leprechauns and Greek vases. So we had many different things, and we studied many different artists from other cultures.
Do you prefer any particular name to describe your background? Is it German American, American?
No, we've never been called anything particular. There hasn't been any particular name to describe my background. Never thought of ourselves as being German American. We're just simply American, with lucky enough to have a German ancestry, which gives us a very strong work ethic and it ties to the earth because we are mostly farmers.
Did you hear any stories of discrimination, especially during the wars between Germany and the United States?
We were never discriminated against. And I think maybe it was because we were all in our own little world on Dutch Hill. So there was no reason. We were all alike. We all had the same kind of background. And we were all definitely for Americans. I mean, we had victory gardens during the war, and we had little songs that would sing, like "Whistle while you work," "Hitler is a jerk," "Mussolini is a meanie," "Whistle while you work." We were definitely Americans. We did not think of ourselves as being German. We did not speak German, except my mother and grandmother, of course, when they didn't want us to know what they were talking about, would speak German. And it was a good place to be. It was like when my grandfather Buchweitz was given his American citizenship. He signed a paper expressing his loyalty to America and to North Dakota, and he said that he would not have any loyalty to the Prussian king anymore, and that was all in the past. Definitely just American.
Any family members ever trace their roots back by going to Europe?
My mother tried to find roots, or where her family came from. It was the area that was called Prussia, Pomerania, I think it was where she was from. But at the time she went back, it was behind the Berlin Wall, and she could not make it back. I can remember my grandfather Buchweitz talking to me once when we'd spend a summer week with him, and he would wonder where his brothers were, if they were still alive or not. So there was never any contact after they came to America with Germany.
I've asked all the required questions from the grants. So, do you have any other stories you'd like to add?
Oh, I can't. No, I don't have any other stories. I have a zillion stories that I'd like to say, because I just feel like I grew up in the best place, the best of time, and it's still, Adrian, is still a very wonderful place to live. I've been here all my life. I'm going to be here forever. So that's it.
Okay, thank you very much.